What if I told you that you might have enough B12 in your bloodstream, but still be deficient in B12? And that this deficiency in B12 could be impacting your recovery from long COVID. A lot of people don't realize that standard blood work doesn't always give you the full picture. Today, I'm going to explain why your body might not be able to use the form of B12 that it has and how that impacts everything from brain health to energy levels. Hello and welcome. I am Carrie Bailey, your functional nutritionist. Welcome to my channel, where we talk about all things long COVID and natural solutions to healing. B12 is really critical for your long COVID recovery for a couple of reasons. You have two very important organs that I find to be most impacted or impactful in long COVID, and one is your liver and the other is your brain. These organs require a lot of B12 in order to function optimally. The liver is responsible for converting the B12 that you get into your bloodstream into a form that your body can use. If your liver is stagnant and sluggish from years of high-fat diets, from pathogens, from toxins, it might not be able to do its job optimally, converting your B12. And it also might not be able to store the B12 that you're getting very well. There's a very high demand for B12 by both your brain and your nervous system, as well as your liver. Your liver and your brain need B12 in order to, one, detoxify the toxins out of your body. And it also needs B12 in order to create new healthy cells. The brain and the liver both require more B12 than any other organ in the body. And when there's not enough optimal levels of B12, you're going to have potentially irreversible damage, unfortunately. Each cell has a capacity to hold B12. Let's call that sort of our B12 cup, right? Each cell, in order for you to recover, must have at least 60% of its B12 capacity in order for you to recover. And that must be the right form of B12, the correct bioavailable form. When there is less than, say, 5% of that capacity of B12 in the cell, there is a much greater risk of having extreme damage and also not being able to recover from that damage and that cell actually dying. Without enough B12, your toxins and pathogens that you're exposed to are able to create more problems in the cell than if you had full capacity of B12. This makes B12 also very protective. B12 also strengthens your brain tissues, right? And makes it able so that you're able to survive any kind of electricity, right? Your nervous system is the electrical system in your body, and it's that nervous system has a protective myelin sheath. B12 strengthens the brain tissues, which allow it to survive the electricity of the brain, of the nervous system. So the nervous system has a protective myelin sheath, right? And that requires a lot of B12 to make sure that it's thick and strong to protect your tissues from the nervous system. Just similar to you have this electrical system in your car, in your house, you'll notice all those wires have a protective plastic around them. This is similar to the nylon sheath that's around your nerves. It protects the tissues behind it. So every brain cell requires B12, and if it doesn't have enough B12, it will die. B12 is present in the cell wall to allow it to be protected in case there's any kind of intoxication or cell damage. The cell can grab that B12 really quickly and fix itself. One thing that depletes a lot of B12 is stress. Stress and trauma. We talk about, feels like everybody talks about trauma these days. Big T, little t, all kinds of traumas. And what's really interesting to know, everyone uses up B12 differently depending on their life experiences. If you have two people that, let's say they were in the same accident or the same, they both go to war, they're going to have a different response and reaction to the events depending on the levels of B12 they have in their body. So if you have someone that's got plenty of B12, they're going to bounce back quicker. But if you have somebody else who's very deficient in B12, they are much more likely to be traumatized by that event. These events, whether it's a car accident, a plane accident, even if you're not directly involved, like the fires in LA, right? You're exposed to those things. And so thinking about, even for me, I was all the way across the country for when the Twin Towers went down, right? When the 9/11 happened. But I was still experienced that traumatic event. And so again, everybody's going to be able to deplete their B12 depending on that. Now, negative events deplete your B12, but it's important to understand that also really positive and exciting events can deplete your B12 as well. So marriages, having a baby, going on vacation, going skiing, going skydiving, all those things, whether they're adrenaline boosting or not, can also deplete B12. So all those things equally. Now, it's interesting to know that negative thoughts do not deplete your B12, thank goodness. and positive thoughts likely won't replete your B12. You could do all the meditating, all the positive thinking, all the affirmations and all those things, but if you don't have enough B12, it's going to cause problems in your body. One thing I always do with my clients is I want to look back at their whole history. This gives me some insight into, again, how depleted their B12 might be, not from just current events, current symptoms, but looking past their life. So I want to know how many times in their life they were exposed to birth control pills. If you're a woman, did you take oral contraception? If you drink alcohol, how much alcohol have you drinking across your life, right? Are you a once a week drinker? Did you drink every day? Did you have periods in your life where there's binge drinking? Because that's going to deplete your B12. And other medications like metformin and antibiotics, these deplete your B12. So again, looking across your life all the way through infancy, did you have things that could have depleted your B12? A lot of people these days, probably one of the top medications that I see people on are PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, or histamine 2 blockers. These are things like Prilosec, Prevacid, and Pepcid. These all deplete your B12. How do you really know if you're deficient in B12 or not, whether you should be supplementing? Well, I guarantee that almost everybody is as deficient in B12 as they are in zinc. Those are the two that I see most commonly in long COVID. So whether you have long COVID or not, there's a really good chance that you're deficient in B12, especially having gone through a whole pandemic. Most symptoms of long COVID match the symptoms that indicate a B12 deficiency. Here's a fun fact. If you have a B12 deficiency, you're going to have a much more difficult time trying to meditate. So if you're one of those persons like me, I think I'm better now, but back in the day, I could not meditate. I could not sit still. I could not focus. So just a fun fact to add in there. Here are some symptoms that indicate that you are probably need not just B12, but therapeutic dosages of B12. Depression, tingling and numbness in your hands and feet, weakness, brain fog, rapid heartbeat, confusion, memory loss, diarrhea, constipation, chronic fatigue. Let's jump now to those testing for B12 that we talked about in the beginning of the video. Blood tests are a snapshot, a point in time. So when you look at someone's blood, if it looks like they have high blood B12 or low B12, that's not necessarily a true indication of the demand in their body. Everyone's going to have a different demand, and that B12 could be different forms of B12. Is it the most bioavailable form? Is it a synthetic form? So what is that B12 that you're seeing in someone's bloodstream? Is it B12 from animal products? We'll talk about that in a second. And so it's important to understand what that B12 is and if your body's even able to utilize it. And there's also no indication from that blood test about the demand that your brain and your liver have for that B12, right? It could be just sucking it up like a sponge. You don't know. There's no indication on that test. It's telling you what's in the bloodstream, but not what's at the cellular level. And specifically which cells, brain cells, liver cells, heart cells. There are some other tests. There's called MMA, which is methylmalonic acid, which is just slightly different than a B12 test. But this one is looking more at your adenosine cobalamin, which is a different form. We'll get to the forms here in a second. But again, it's a snapshot, a point in time. It doesn't tell you what your body needs, what kind of B12 it is. There is also a test called a SpectraCell test. So this test is looking at the red blood cell, and what they do is they starve it to see how long it lives without certain nutrients. So they starve it of B12 and things like that, and that's how they decide whether or not you are deficient in something. But I would argue that that test is a little bit too narrow to define that. It's looking at a red blood cell, which is different than a liver cell and a brain cell. There's no taking into consideration for the circumstance of the human that it's in, right? So again, each human has a different demand for red blood cells. I would love for you to drop a comment if you have any questions along the way. I always read and reply to your comments. Before we get into replenishing B12 and how to do that, I want to tell you about my long COVID recovery guide. This is a free gift that I have created for you, my long COVID community, in order to give you a jump start to really help you start on your journey to healing. If you have not grabbed a copy of that, I left a link in the description below for you to download. All right, let's jump into replenishing B12. So the first thing I always like to say is there is no toxic upper limit of B12. It's water soluble. So what your body isn't able to store, it's just going to pass. Your body needs therapeutic dosages of B12. And there's no test that's going to tell you specifically how much B12 your body needs and also how deficient you are. The blood test is just not accurate for that information. High doses or therapeutic doses of B12 might be indicated by symptoms like headaches, nausea and vomiting, fatigue, tingling in the hands and feet. Let's jump into the dosages and forms of B12 that are most optimal for repleting your levels. There's very little B12 found in food. There's this misconception out there that if you're eating animal protein, that you're getting plenty of B12. But here's the gist. You aren't getting the right form of B12. That B12 is not bioavailable for humans. That B12 was intended for the animal that you're eating. And so it's not the bioavailable form that you need. There is a bioavailable form that's fantastic if you can access it. Again, it's very specific. And so this is from a probiotic. And these probiotics are grown on fresh fruits and vegetables. So if you grow your own fruits and vegetables, or if you buy things at the farmer's market, these special probiotics that help you make B12 grow on these plants. And so if you can buy something at the farmer's market, consume it right away, pull things out of your garden and consume it right away. And if you don't have a garden and you don't have access to the farmer's market, you can literally grow broccoli sprouts on your kitchen counter, right? Super easy. You just get a mason jar and you get some organic, non-GMO broccoli seeds, put some water on it, soak it. You can literally within a few days have these sprouts. Save you a lot of money at the grocery store, and you can have them on hand because eating a little bit of this every day is the absolute best probiotic you can get out there. These probiotics are fantastic. What they do is they go inside your body. They go to that last section of your small intestine right before the colon. This is called your ileum. And they live there, and that's where they help you make B12. Now, when they're not there and you have excess, those go to your liver for storage, if there's room. But we've talked about how the liver is very sluggish and stagnant and might not have room for those beneficial bacteria. Let's jump into the different forms of B12 that are out there and get you familiar with that. The first form is cyanocobalamin. Cyanocobalamin is a synthetic form of B12. You're going to find this in lower end supplements. You're going to find this in the dairy section of the grocery store, or any kind of food section, processed food that is fortified. So anything that says it's B12 in it, just assume it's cyanocobalamin, and you want to avoid it because it's synthetic and your body has to convert this to be able to use it. The next form is hydroxycobalamin. And hydroxycobalamin is usually found in supplement form, and it is the precursor to methylcobalamin and adenosylcobalamin. So it is still a step away from the form you need. And I like to bring it in if there's a lot of ammonia or nitric oxide and things like free radicals that I want to mop up, but it's not necessarily the best form to replete. But I have talked about hydroxycobalamin in previous videos. And so it is helpful. It is a better place to start than zero. The two forms that your body needs, and your body needs both of these forms, by the way, not just one. It needs methylcobalamin and adenosylcobalamin. So the methylcobalamin helps you methylate, it helps you detoxify, and helps also your whole nervous system, rebuilds that myelin sheath that I was talking about. But the adenosol is also important in your mitochondria. It's the one that helps you produce energy. So your body needs both forms. Let's talk about the delivery methods. There's multiple ways to get B12 into your body. Let's first talk about the injection form. You can go to naturopaths, to doctors. There's even special shops you can buy it online where they're going to sell you cyanocobalamin, methylcobalamin in injectable form, right? And you want to avoid this form because when you're injecting it into your body, into your muscle, into that tissue, that's not where your body is expecting it to go. So it kind of sends off these alarms to your immune system saying, hey, I don't know what this is. There's this foreign thing. It's causing damage. And so it will create antibodies against it and attack it. So I don't recommend that. Another sort of injectable form is IV drip therapy, and that where they put it straight into your bloodstream. That one's okay. But it's not sustainable. So what's happening is you're going in with an IV bag of saline. They're putting the B12 in you, which is great, but you're sitting there anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. It costs upwards underwear of like $200. And the amount of B12 that you're getting is the amount you need in one day. So obviously that's not sustainable, right? There's no way you're going to go get this done every single day when you can actually get something significantly cheaper, more effective, when you can, which I'll talk about in a second. The other form of B12 is ingestion. This is a capsule form, go through your digestive system. So things like in a multivitamin or a B complex, you're going to find B12. Most of the time, it's a methylcobalamin or a cyanocobalamin. The maximum dosage that I've seen is 1,200 micrograms, and that's really not enough. And we'll talk about the dosages in a second. But the form that I do recommend is a sublingual form that you can put literally as a tincture or liquid under your tongue. And you're going to hold it there. It's going to absorb straight into your bloodstream. It's going to go right to your brain where you need it. That's the kind that I recommend. And I've recommended it on other videos. I'll put a link down in the description below for it because I know that's going to be in high demand for you guys. Therapeutic dosage could be as high as 5,000 micrograms a day or higher. I don't recommend going higher than that unless you're working with a practitioner who really understands this stuff. But the highest dosage that I've ever seen in a B complex or a capsule like that is about 1,200 micrograms. So you're just not going to be able to get the dosage that you need in the form that you need when you do it, ingest it. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to my channel so you can see more of my videos as I release them each week. And if you haven't already, download your long COVID recovery guide with the link in the description and in the comments below. And just a quick recap that everybody needs B12, especially people with long COVID, and you're going to need therapeutic dosages. And the forms that I recommend is a liquid tincture, and that's the total recap. And your liver and your brain will thank you, and everything is going to come back online. It's not going to be immediate. It could take some time to replete that. Remember, you're filling up that little cup in every single cell in your body, of which there's 30 trillion. So give it some time, give it some patience. It's got to be a lot of repair work that's going to happen because it's going to get in there. It's going to help you function, but it's also going to do a lot of repair. Thank you so much for being here. Bye for now.